Welcome, comadres and friends. I am Maria Ferrer, the Executive Director of Las Comadres para las Américas, and I am on the leadership team for the Las Comadres and Friends National Latino Book Club. The leadership team and I are pleased that you are joining us for tonight's podcast. We are in our 19th year. Believe it or not, 19 years. It has been our privilege to support Latina authors throughout these years, and we look forward to many, many more years to come. We'd also like to extend a warm welcome to our readers following us on our live Twitter chat at Read Latino Lit. Tonight, please help us welcome authors Jennifer Givhan and Kayden Phoenix. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping notes. Please keep yourselves on mute. You can keep your videos on, but don't move around too much. We suggest that you put yourselves on speaker mode, but gallery works just as well. And if you have any questions or comments, please put them on their chat and we will try to get to them. Let's now start with a brief history of our book club. Comadre Nidia.
Thank you, comadre.
Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Comadre Maria. Thank you. Welcome, comadres and friends. My name is Nidia Marcella, and I'm the book club membership coordinator. Our book club began in July of 2004 in the apartment of Maria Ferrer, here in New York City. But after a brief pause, Nora comes to talk, reimagine and relaunch the organization nationwide. Her vision was to promote Latino authors, bring our community into bookstores, and support our writers. In October of 2006, we began hosting teleconferences, and now, in our 19th year, we continue to share work with Latina authors, with books lovers, and everywhere. Our book club and podcast are designed to encourage everyone, not just Latinos, to read more Latino literature, explore diverse cultural perspectives, and gain deeper insight into Latino roots and heritage. We are creating a space where readers can explore the rich inner world of Latino writers through their written work. We currently have book clubs in 12 cities around different time zones. We invite you to join a local chapter that fits your schedule. If your city isn't represented, we welcome your help to starting a new club. For more information, visit the website that I'm going to put in the chat. So spread the word and invite others to join our literary community. Okay, continue with Comadre Karen.
Welcome, comadres and friends, to our December 2025 podcast. This is Karen Gonzalez, Assistant Coordinator for the Las Comadres and Friends Book Club, Denver Comadres Book Club Facilitator, and co-founder of the Colorado Alliance of Latino Mentors and Authors. Thank you for joining us tonight. Our first interview is with Jennifer Givhan, a Mexican-American and indigenous poet and novelist from the Southwestern Desert, and the recipient of poetry fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts and Penn Rosenthal Emerging Voices. She holds a master's degree from California State University Fullerton and a master's in fine arts from Warren Wilson College. Her newest poetry collection, Valley to the Brutal, and novel River Woman, River Demon, both draw from her practice of brujeria. Her latest novel, Salt Bones, was chosen for Amazon's book club and as a national Together We Read library pick, and has also won an International Latino Book Award in the Rudolfo Anaya Latino Focus Fiction category. Interviewing Jennifer is Comadre Tess Tobin, Project Manager for the Las Comadres and Friends National Latino Book Club. Take it away, Comadre Tess.
Hey, Jen, how are you?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad we got the date right and you're finally here. For those who are listening, can you just give us a little brief summary of this story? I know it's very hard. There's so much going on, but could you summarize it a little bit for us, please?
Sure. It's about a mother on the Mexicali border. Her name is Malamar or she goes by Mal Veracruz, and her two daughters, Amaranta and Griselda. Her daughter Griselda is in college in San Diego, and Amaranta is in high school. When Mal was a teenager, her sister Elena went missing. And they grew up by the Salton Sea, which is where I grew up by the Mexicali Desert. And so now it's 20 years later, and she's raising her daughters and finds out that another girl has gone missing. And so she's terrified that whatever happened to her sister is happening again. And she's haunted by the apparition of a horse-headed woman that we'll find out in the story is La Ciguanaba. And so the question is, why is La Ciguanaba haunting her? What is happening to the girls? And how will Mal protect her girls from going missing?
Good, that's great. There's a lot going on in this book. As I said, I have to tell you, I really couldn't put it down. It drew me in so, and your description of the landscape and everything, apart from the characters, was just very inspiring. You said you grew up in this area, so is this what sparked your interest to write a book about the borderlands?
Yes, and I write about the borderlands. That is what I write about. And so I live in New Mexico now. I've raised my children here in New Mexico for 15 years, but I did grow up in Southern California, primarily in the desert there. And so my inspiration does come from the Southwest and our culture here. When I went back to my hometown about 10 years ago or so, and I was having carne asada with my comadre there, Lisa, she told me about what was happening with the Salton Sea, that it's often referred to as a man-made or accidental lake that occurred or that filled up when irrigation dam channeling water down from the Colorado River broke during a series of floods in the early 1900s, and it filled the salt basins there. But it's a lake that has been filling and drying for millennia. So it's not necessarily accidental. And that's one of the things that I discuss in the book in terms of indigenous land and this land having belonged to the Kumeyaay and Cajiwa Indian peoples who knew that the water came and went and would travel with the water over time. But change is that the lake is drying, and because of the last 50 years of irrigation for the surrounding crops and an agricultural business that brings in $1 billion a year to Southern California every year, although most of the people who live in the area are primarily Mexican and primarily live well under the poverty level, despite that $1 billion industry, had been flowing pesticides into the water for the past 50 years. So now it's drying up and releasing all of those pesticides, like all of the chemicals like DDT, arsenic, lead are in the playa. And then the wind lifts them up, and now they're going into the lungs of everyone who lives there. It is one of the highest rates of asthma in the country. I believe that San Jose is the other leading place, which is also primarily Mexican, primarily agricultural place in California. And so these pesticides are causing harm, true harm to this community. My friend told me that if nothing was done, the Imperial Valley, which I call El Valle in the book, would become a ghost town. And that really struck me, that idea. I had watched something around the same time about the Salton Sea, and it was in a show called Abandoned America. And I thought, this is a community that is providing the entire nation's winter vegetables, and it is not abandoned. It is thriving and alive and filled with culture, primarily Chicano Mexican culture. And nobody knows about it, and nobody's doing anything to help. So yes, my childhood there, as well as all of the research then that I poured into over the next decade, finding out what was being done for the Salton Sea, what could we do, and how could we highlight this issue. I'm not a journalist. I'm a poet and a novelist. And I thought, how am I going to tell everybody about this without getting onto my soapbox? My soapbox is really rickety and I don't have much of a platform. And so I thought, well, you know what? People really like murder mysteries. So I wrapped my ecological swan song heart in a murder mystery like a burrito.
Well, I think that the way you develop your story, like you say, the main character is Mal, and she has two daughters, and there's the history there where her sister disappeared when she was 16, and now a new young lady's disappeared, and then her daughter disappears. So I think there's such emotional um, things going on with these ladies. But how did you get to develop these characters?
That's a great question. So a lot of my stories start with uh, a bit of my own family and my own personal story. I one time about, I don't know, several years ago, my kids were, let's see, 7 and 11, and they're 15 and 18 now. So whatever that is, several years ago, I started trying to write a memoir. And I got about 100 pages in, and I don't know what I'll do with it. But when I start instead with a novel, a fictional idea, and instead I infuse my family, my heart, my own experiences with my children, the stories that my mom has told me, and I start with that deep truth, but then I also know that I have the freedom and the courage to be able to tell, all of the different stories of yes, my own family members, like my own grandmother, my own tias, my own my own godmothers, and then also the women that I grew up with, the women that helped raise me, and then stories that I've heard, as well as just making things up and having creative license to do that. I feel a sense of freedom to be able to tell what I learned as a poet is called our heart truth, instead of sticking to just the factual truth. And so, yeah, so Mal is a bit of me and a bit of my mom, and all of the other characters, pretty much every character has a bit of a family member as well as just like fictionalized attributes. And then they grow to, like, they start out that way, but then the story grows on its own and turns into its own living, breathing world. And and it feels a bit like every time I write a new book, it feels a bit like I'm chasing someone through the forest and I don't know where I'm going and I'm totally lost. And I'm just like going through the path with them, and the story unfolds with the choices that they make. And so even though I have a sense from the very beginning, especially crafting murder mysteries, I have to have a sense of where it's going so I can retro architect it. But and so I can and include all of the red herrings and the clues and all of those things. But so much of who the characters are and the choices they make, and even a lot of the twists, and then and sometimes even the major plot twists change as the characters show me who they are. And so with this novel, I actually had totally different villains in mind, and I had to trick myself. And so I won't give away any spoilers, but I had to trick myself because from the very beginning, I had a sense of what was going to happen. And then I was like, I told my husband, I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm going to write a different kind of story. I'm going to find a different character. And I did. I created this whole other story, and I was writing and writing. And then about two-thirds of the way in, or I mean, really, we were getting to the crucial point when it's time to start revealing, who done it in a sense. And I went over to I was writing in my office, and I got up and I went into the living room, and I was telling my husband, I know who did it, and it's not who I thought it was. And I was like, I was all teary eyed, and and I made myself sit down and write it, even though it was very, very hard, because like I said, I had written so much of my heart and my family into the story. And so even though there's absolutely not a one-to-one correlation between my family stories and what happened, there are parallels. And so, like, even before I wrote this story, I had known that I wanted to write about the machismo culture and the patriarchy and some of and even in Mexica, Latina, Chicana culture that I love so much, and that has been so enriching to my life and my spirit and my heart, but also knowing that there are problems within it, real problems that have affected, especially my mom and the way she was raised, and then how she raised me, and then how I'm raising my daughter. And so I knew that I wanted to examine those issues, but sometimes there were things that were too painful to write about, which is why I haven't yet been able to write a straightforward memoir. I haven't found my way into that. I write through poetry and I write through novels, but so what the kind of abuse that my family had undergone, I realized that with this story, I wanted to tell the stories of the missing and murdered Indigenous and Latina girls and women. And so I translated. So thankfully, no girl or woman in my family has been murdered, but there have been other violations upon our spirits, upon our bodies, other violences that have been committed that I was able to translate into the story through those characters.
Yeah, I mean, the characters are very rich, and Mal's relationship with her daughters, and then her mother is just so mean to her. I mean, you were able to portray that. So I guess you're saying there was a little resistance in what you were writing, that you got to a point where the characters just weren't melding. So I know you're a poet, so I think, how is that to write? How is it to take your poetry and put it into prose? Is it just flow, or how do you work with that?
I had to teach myself how to write in prose, and I had to teach myself how to write plot. Those were not aspects of writing that came naturally to me. If I just sit down, um, now I can sit down and just start writing prose. But before, and I would sit down and it would come out in lines of poetry. And so many of my books, at least in part, many of my novels have come out, at least in my journals. I keep journals. And for Salt Bones, I filled up like 4 or 5 journals because it was so complicated. All of the family and the generational epic aspects of it. And like I originally had like 150 pages just of Mal's childhood. And and it was very lyric. It was a lot of poems, a lot of character sketches. And so it hadn't come out in straight up narrative, like straight up linear narrative. And so, but there were absolutely 150 pages of her childhood, which I had to narrow down with my agent's help and then my editor's help after that. I think I fought tooth and nail for one full chapter in here. That's one of my favorite chapters. That like my editor thought maybe I should take the whole thing out because it's a flashback, and I said no, we need this chapter. It's chapter 11, the first missing girl 25 years ago. So I fought tooth and nail for that one and kept it, so it's about 4 or 5 pages, and then there are just a few vignettes throughout that flashbacks that share her childhood, but that all got condensed. I call it the accordion method, where I stretch it out and then I scrunch it back in and stretch it out and scrunch it back in. So this book at one point, if you put together all the material I ever had, it was about 600 pages. So, but it started from like just a few lines of a poem because, and I have the epigraph here, which is a poem of Evan Boleyn's, and it's The Pomegranate, I believe is what the poem is called. And it's: the only legend I have ever loved is the story of a daughter lost in hell and found and rescued there. So that seed of an idea, because in some ways where I grew up on the Mexicali border was very, very hot. Like 120 in the summer is the norm. And the summer lasts from May to November. Like it is hot most of the time there. And So in some ways, and then because of the ecological crisis, it feels like a hellscape, even though it's, when I went back for research was in November, and it was beautiful and I loved it. Went to the Catacall parade and just had a really wonderful time with my friends and family still there. But a lot of the time it can be a pretty difficult place to live. And so that idea of the daughter being lost and found in hell, and the daughter not only being the main character, Mal's daughters, but also Mal herself. And so the mother, that relationship of mother as daughter, mother-daughter, right? And that fluidity of learning to mother ourselves so we can mother our daughters, or times that our daughters mother us with their wisdom or with their innocence, perhaps, that they haven't been through those traumas. And so they teach us to look at things anew, and then we can heal ourselves and move forward. It's something that I've been thinking about for a long time. When we heal ourselves, we can heal the future going forward, but we can also heal the past. And so that's the goal of Salt Bones in particular, and really all my work. And so I feel like I'm going to just keep writing about mothers and daughters until my dying day, because there's so much to say.
Yeah, no, and you have such a strong relationship with your own children, so it's like all.
And my mom.
Mom too. She's still with us too.
Yes, she is.
Good.
Yeah.
So the description of the Salton Sea, I mean, that you took from your own experience of growing up, because it's almost, I felt it was so raw, just the feel you get of just those, shorelines and all the bones and all the things underneath your feet. What was your next best character to develop? Was it one of the female characters, or did you enjoy writing about the male characters in the book?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, because the Salton Sea absolutely was a character, and I loved writing, and I love writing landscape as character. So I'm glad that you noticed that. And La Ciguanaba, the horse-headed woman, she was also really fun to develop. And is she a menace, or she a hinderer or a helper? What is she? What is her purpose? And La Ciguanaba, so this is a story that comes to us from primarily Central America, but I heard it first where I grew up, and it was like La Llorona, except hers had a twist, because she's supposed to come for womanizers, drunkards, I think I say mujeriegos y borrachos in the novel, but and so men will think that she's beautiful and alluring, and they'll see her from the back with her long dark flowing hair, and then she'll turn around and the horror of her full visage hits them, and by the time they scream, it's too late. But I also heard, like La Llorona, that she comes for children, and for primarily, or some people had said for girls. And I was like, why would she do that? And so it didn't make sense to me. And that curiosity of where the tale came from and how it developed and why it developed. And even full disclosure, I write about La Llorona in everything. So, but that always inspired my curiosity as well. Like, why does La Llorona come for children? And so I had examined kind of the Malinche story of La Llorona, and that she was a violated woman, or perhaps that she didn't actually drown her children the way that she was portrayed, or things like that. So I always was interested in the historical context for her. But since I've written about La Llorona ad infinitum, I was like, okay, it's time for a different monstrous mama to take center stage. And so I became very obsessed with La Ciguanaba, and I actually have an original copy. So this is one, I hope you can see it, that you see her horse head there. Right. And so this is an arc. This is what the original cover looked like. But and then you can see on the new cover that it's just the hair blowing in the wind. And so you're not really sure who she is, whether it's La Ciguanaba or one of the girls or women who have gone missing.
Who changed that on you? Did you?
My editor. So she was away on maternity leave, and I had picked this one. But then they did a focus group, and I guess they had wanted to open it up more, not just for horror, but also for just larger book clubs and just have a wider audience. Like I'm always for, well, I never realized that I'm horror. I just write my heart, and then people tell me, this is really scary. This kept me up at night. This gave me nightmares. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't necessarily mean to, but great. And so apparently this was a little too scary.
It's funny. I'm so unsure of that word horror because I wouldn't describe your story as horror. I just thought it was so real life that,
Thank you. See, yes, and I think that really is the Latina experience. And I've had this also with other people of color. I was talking to a writer, Cadwell Turnbull, who is from the Caribbean, and he was talking about how he also just writes his childhood, writes his stories, and it's labeled as either horror or speculative, or for Latino writers, like we know, magical realism, but which I embrace and I love, and I definitely claim that. But also, this was just our experiences and the stories that we heard growing up, and they were real. Like I had to run through the alley to get to the donut shop because La Llorona was in that field behind the parking lot. Like she was there and she was going to get us. So that's not horror. That's just my life.
how about, have you gotten any feedback from people with anything that you were surprised of their response to it? Like, for example, the ending. Has there been any feedback to you about the ending, or what do you think?
It's always so hard because it's a murder mystery, and so I can't talk too much about the ending without spoiling it.
Yeah, well,
But
you don't have
I
to.
have,
I'm just saying.
no, I know. Thank you. I appreciate that question. I have had people surprised at the family, at Mal and her daughter's reaction to how they responded. And all I'll say is that family means everything to me. And that was the position that I came to this. Like when there is something wrong in the family, I believe with all my heart that we have to speak the truth and we have to root it out. And that sick root, that wound has, all of the sickness has to be pulled out of it. My mom was an RN and my husband's a wound nurse. And so I've seen some gnarly wounds, and like all of that has to be pulled out so that it can heal. And so I absolutely believe that it has to come out into the open. But I also know that love is love, and love, there's just no, like, there's no rhyme or reason to love. And I also do believe in restorative justice. And I wanted that idea of love and community and social good, and what we could do, like what the justice system could look like. And so I know in my heart that my story is imperfect because it's messy, because there's no right or wrong answer necessarily. And because this is something that I think we all need to examine within ourselves, within our cultures, within our families, within our society as a whole. And we need to root out what's not working and find a better solution. I don't know that I found the best solution, but Mal does not claim to have found the perfect solution. It was just the one that she could live with. And so,
Good way to explain it.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
good. Okay, I just want to touch on, we're almost finished. I just want to touch on, your bio mentions that you practice brujeria. And I just wanted you to talk a little bit about that because I think we've all been terribly influenced by Disney movies and thinking of witches and, you're around the spell. But I think you look at it much differently, like it's almost a relationship with the earth or something. Can you talk a little
Yeah.
bit about how you use that in your writing?
Yeah, I mean, so River Woman, River Demon really does discuss my beliefs in terms of folk magic. And I think that in Latina culture, there is kind of a shadow line drawn between curanderismo and brujeria, with brujeria being like um, the like darker side of it. But I embrace it as a term, just as a word of empowerment. And also because curanderismo also has a kind of depending on which practice, like an actual healing, um, like physical healing that comes with it. That's my mom and my husband who do that, and you know, they literally heal people, and like other curanderas that I know, whereas mine is more spiritual. And so I'm doing the work with shadow. I am delving into the trauma as a individual, as a mother daughter, as a woman in this world, and I'm doing battle with those dark spiritual forces, and I'm bringing that to the page. I'm bringing my battle to the page, and I take with me, you know, I have here, for instance, my Palo Santo. I have a crystal with me here. Tangible physical tools. I also have pictures of my children. I have pictures of me and my children. I have turquoise from Zuni, where the elder storyteller in Zuni allowed me into the culture and shared with me the story that I wrote in Trinity Site. And so I have these tangible physical tools that ground me to my spirit, to my family, to this earth, to my roots, and keep me safe while I do this spiritual battle and bring it to the page in my book. So I do see my books as my curanderismo. But, you know, I just love the play and the sassiness and the, you know, kind of badassery, like I'm a chingona, I'm a bruja, you know, ike, you know, kind of energy that it brings, like the talking back to the patriarchy, talking back to you know, those beliefs that women's practices are somehow negative or evil. I'm really talking back to that.
Good. Okay, I think we could go on forever, but why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're working on now and what we can expect to come along?
Yeah, so go check out any of my social media for the cover, which was just revealed last week for The Sleeping Sisters. And I'm so excited to share this next novel. It comes out next August from Mulholland Little Brown. And it is the story of a true real life serial killing that occurred here in Albuquerque, where I've been living for the past 15 years. I moved here, and we moved onto the West Mesa by the volcanoes, the Sleeping Sister, or Sacred Sister volcanoes. And someone told me about the 11 girls and women who had been buried there in mass graves. And the way that they spoke about them, they called them hookers. And I felt that was so dehumanizing. I'm sorry, so dehumanizing. And I became really obsessed with finding out the stories, not only of these beautiful 11 souls and the story behind it, but also really just so many of the girls and women who are violated and violence perpetrated against us in New Mexico in particular. And so I fictionalized the story, as I do. It was the whole same process as Salt Bones, in terms of taking the root seed of something real and painful that I wanted social justice for and wanted you know, more people to know about. But then I did that spiritual battle and all of the creativity and all of that, and turned it into a murder mystery that I feel also has social resonance, but is also a lot of fun to read, ironically. And so I hoped that it would just be a really engaging murder mystery, but my daughter, who was helping me along the way, really have the courage to keep writing this story. And then a dear friend of mine, when they finished it, they told me it's a work of art. And so I hope that's true, because I put my whole heart and soul into it, and I just can't wait to share it with you.
Good. I can see that that's how you approach your writing. Well, Jennifer, thank you so much. I really enjoyed speaking with you. I enjoyed the book, and we hope to have you back again. So thanks again for coming.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Gracias, comadres. Our second interview is Kayden Phoenix, a writer from Boyle Heights, California. She created the first Latina superhero team in comic book history, A la Brava. A big part of my life's purpose is to give voice to stories as multifaceted, atypical, and diverse as the people we find in the real world. Interviewing Kayden is Comadre Shirley Yanis, avid lover of books, manga, movies, anime, podcast, and her community. She previously served as the co-host of the Gets Chat podcast and was a producer for the Latino Film Market Film Festival. They are passionate about supporting BIPOC and LGBTQ plus stories, books, podcasts, art, content creators, directors, authors, and film projects. Take it away, Comadre Shirley.
Hi everyone, good evening. Hi, Kayden, how you doing? Good evening. Yes, I actually wanted to say thank you for writing Latino superheroes. I don't think you could see the because of my background. Maybe you could see it kind of. But thank you because I love superheroes, I love fantasy, I love horror, but what makes it so much better is that when it has diversity for me. I think for everyone else here too. You just get these different stories, but in such a magical way, and it just influences like your life in some way, and you can see yourself in it. I don't know. I just love those type of stories and stuff. So thank you for that. So yeah, let's get started. So you actually mentioned before this recording that this is an origin story, and reading it, it's about the origin story of Jalisco and Santa, who are the first Latino, I guess the first volume of the origin story for the Latino superheroes. And before you mentioned that, I actually was reading it and I was like, oh yeah, this feels like an origin story because I'm so used to reading origin stories for like comic books and stuff. And so I was like, I went on your website and I looked it up and I was like, oh yeah, it is an origin story. And there's like a whole team. So
Yes.
what was your inspiration behind your creation of Latino superheroes and the A La Brava team?
Well, I started this roughly like 5 years ago, and I'm an independent writer and director. That's actually much more what I think I am as a filmmaker. I can't say that now as much, but I wanted to see a Latina superhero on the big screen. And I was like, right before that, I was like, okay, no one's paying me to write any script, right? I don't know anybody, but I can have a spec script, right? To try to pitch it. And so that was literally my thought is like, what do I want to see on the big screen? And my first thought was Latina superhero. And I was like, okay, I could do that. And so I thought of one and I was like, okay, if I make five, I increase my chances that one of those five will make it to the big screen. It was literally just me in my mind thinking that makes sense. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I can make five superheroes. And if you have five, they're in a team. If they're in a team, they're in a universe, right? And that's just kind of how I progressed into making a Latina superhero team. So I read out the first one, which is Jalisco, which is the one you pointed out. She's my Mexicana. She's my only non-American Latina as well. And she dances folklorico, which is Mexican dance, which is the one with the big dress. And then the blades come out of her dress. And so when she's dancing, she can like deflect bullets, or she can put her hand out, like whip her dress out, and the blades fly out of her dress as well. So my mom knows folklorico, so it's very easy. My mom was my superhero, so it was a very, very easy one. I was like, okay, great, that's fun. I understand it enough. And then also my grandma is from Jalisco. And so I was like, great. It's a little nod to everyone, or not everyone, but certain people in my family. Everyone else, which is just a little side note, is everyone's names are actually people in my family or my family's names. So that's just for me. That doesn't matter in the story, but that's just for me. And so this was the first one. I wrote a screenplay. I shot a sizzle, which is like a short film to pitch it. I did my pitch deck as well. And everyone I showed it to said, "Hey, this is like a comic. You should make it a comic." And every time I was like, "No." And like, no, no, no. Like a lot of people literally thought it was like, or I pitched it, right? They thought it should be a comic book. And so I am truth by consensus. And so I was like, fine. Everyone says it's comic, it'll be a comic. And so I pivoted and I had to figure out what the heck is a comic. And so I did comic versus graphic novel. Like there's all these little things that I was not raised with comics, right? Because they're very white, right? They're very, very vanilla. And it was not me. And so anyway, I had to research, which is fine. You go on YouTube and you see like the top 10 best comics ever created, which is subjective, but Truth by Consensus tells you pretty much who is or which are the best comics. And so the answer to shorthand is anything by Alan Moore is literally like the best graphic novel ever created. So if you think of V for Vendetta, you think of Watchmen, The Killing Joke, right? Those are all written by him and they're all very different. But it's like, okay, why him? And there's other ones as well, but like, why him? Why is he the best in regards to those graphic novels or stories that he created? So I researched, and so that's kind of the process. I kind of forgot your question, to be honest with you, but that was the process of how it all started. I think that was it.
I think that was it. It was that and behind the creation, but also like the team and stuff. So yeah, you answered it fine. You answered really good. But it's true, like with comic book characters or graphic novels, it's always like Batman or Superman or Spider-Man. And it's white men really, unless you get into like Spider-Man with Miles Morales, and that's like different and stuff. But that came later on. So yeah, it's very important to diversify your stories. So yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
this graphic novel features, of course, the origin story of La Brava members, Jalisco and Santa. Can you describe the creative process behind crafting this group of Latino superheroes? In a sense of like you were mentioning that you didn't know like comic books too much and graphic novels. Like, what did you do to be like, all right, I'm gonna do this, let's go? Because that is different mediums and different forms. So it is,
That's fair.
yeah.
So I grew up, I'm a millennial, so I grew up watching a lot of Disney princess movies, or all Disney animation movies, and also like the big box office movies in regards to like the female forward ones, right? With Sigourney Weaver, Gina Davis, right? So like I had my idea of what a superhero was, and then pretty because these look like Disney characters in some degree, right? With the big
Yeah,
eyes and
they
the
do.
soft gems.
Yeah.
But so I kind of just converted those two worlds together. I did know some comic superheroes. Like I watched the Batman animated series growing up. I watched X-Men animated series growing up as well. And so that was my frame of reference before I do research real comics. But that was, I guess, my base. And then the creative process is just I'm still a screenwriter. I'm still a writer, so I can say a story. And that's what I did. I did not write in the same format that comics are. I wrote a screenplay for each one of my characters because I know screenplays. And then I just converted it over to a comic. And then each one of my artists, they also received, my penciler mainly, received the script, but they also got a storyboard because I'm a director. So I did storyboards, which is like the panels, right? The single panels of it, but just I'm not an artist, so I did like little sketches and stick figures, and then the notes on the bottom, of course, so they can know who it is. But that was the creative process. And in regards to choosing my characters, I just kind of, when we see Latinas, we kind of default Chicanas, which is fine because I'm Chicana, but it's also not fine because where's everybody else? And so, and it's always a stereotypical East LA Chicana, which is me, but I am not what the media portrays us to be, right? And so, what happened to the Puerto Ricans? What happened to the Cubans or the Dominicans or literally any of them, right? Like, there's a big Latina diaspora, and meaning media only focuses on Chicanos, right? And so I only have five, so I try to give different Latinas a little bit of representation and also geographically as well. Like I'm my Miami girl, she's Puerto Rican Cuban. I'm my New Yorker who's Dominican, right? Because we don't know any Dominican superheroes, unfortunately. My Texan girl, my Tejana is Santa. And so they're just in different places because they have different experiences as well. And so that was something that was important to me. So that was one of my bases. And then for the creative, I just kind of chose what I liked. I always choose what I like. And so I, like the femicide was easy because my other grandma's from Chihuahua. And like I knew about the women of Juarez since I was small. It's because I used to visit El Paso a lot and Juarez. And so like it's just like, great, I can write about that. I can research it as well, which I did, but like I can write about that. And so that's Jalisco's story. She actually takes on the femicide in Mexico, which is why she's the only non-American Latina. The rest are based in the United States. And then same thing, they all just kind of vary based on what interested me. Santa's a luchador, right? So this one, which I don't really give her much, but Santa's the luchador. She's my Texan girl. And in my mind, because I'm so LA, whenever I visited Texas, it's like the Wild West, right, to me. And everyone likes to fight. And still, if you look in the news, they're all liking to fight, and especially like they like fighting Californians. But it's just like that's something, but it's fun. So it's like, what's the fun version? They're luchadores, because why not? And so that is why half the people in the story is a luchador, and it's also symbolic. Sorry, it's also symbolic as well, of who represents a luchador and who doesn't. And so there are just fun little aspects that entertained me. And I know it's not the best answer, but it entertained me, and they were diverse enough that like some of them have really great silhouettes, like Bandita's my gunslinger from New York. And it doesn't make sense to have a cowgirl in New York, but I made it make sense in my mind so it can work out. But it's like imagine a cowgirl going to New York, but like she's actually from Washington Heights, and she has the Western accent. And you have to figure out why, because none of it makes sense. But that's not the whole part. That's the reason why you fall for her and you root for her as well, because they're all origin stories. So it's like here's the setup as to why should we root for them and go for them. So yeah, they're all just little parts of what I liked in regards to the type of superheroes, and then they're also all very grounded. Their powers are grounded. Two of them actually do come from Brujeria as well, but they're all grounded powers because what they fight is grounded. And so that was something in the creative process that I was thinking, like, Superman saves Metropolis, Batman always save Gotham, right? Because it is their hometowns that they care about. And if you're a team, you save the world, you save the galaxy. If you're Guardians, right? Or if you're Justice League, you always save the country. But at the end of the day, nobody saves girls, right? And that's something that I've always seen in real life, and we can go anytime on the internet and you can see that. And nobody cares about girls, right? Batman only cares if it's, or Superman, sorry, only cares if it's Lois Lane, right? Unless you're like Mary Jane, you do not get saved, And so that's one of the really unfortunate things that they have that power to save and change, and they don't. And so that's why these girls rise up because there's social injustices. And like I said, Jalisco takes on the femicide. She's literally trying to save females. And that's it. It's a very simple, I wish they did it in real life. But, that's something that was always really important to me.
Yeah. No, that's very important because sadly, like you were saying, women are probably just gonna, be the group that saves themselves in a sense. And like you said, you see that time and time again. Yeah. That's the sad reality,
Mm-hmm.
But in the story, Jalisco receives assistance from a group called Andi. I'm probably gonna mess this right. Adelitas?
Adelitas.
Adelitas, thank you. Adelitas, a band of women dedicated to tackling the issues of femicide, which you brought up, of course. The use of this name immediately brings to mind the original Adelitas, the woman who famously participated in the Mexican Revolution, why I keep on saying incorrupting, was incorrupting this powerful historic reference, an important aspect of how you chose to tell Jalisco's story. Incorporating. Thank you. I don't know why I kept on messing up that word. It kept on something else, but thank you. Yes, go on.
So it is important to put some honor and respect on some of the stuff that I've done. Like it is fictional, right? Obviously at the end of the day. But my grandma's name is actually Adela, which is why the mentor, which is the lady running La Adelitas, is named Adela, right? Because it's short for Adelita. And she's actually from Jalisco, my grandma. And so like it all kind of plays in, I mean, it doesn't matter for the story, but it all plays in really nicely for me. And it all fit really well. And so, yeah, like here's the nod. These Adelitas, these revolutionary soldiers that got no credit, that, they're up fighting next to guys and they're up fighting and risking their lives. So yes, it isn't very important. I obviously can't put the history of Mexico. That's not my job. My job is to make a Latino superhero. But yeah, absolutely. It's something to bring to light and to honor as well. So so yes, I did do that part. And I also did Pascualita, which is like an urban legend in Chihuahua, even though we're technically in Jalisco. But I brought like little things that I could add that didn't hurt the story, that I think just added extra little nods. Because like Malinche is the villain, and people think she's not. And in history, if you know history, right? Like some people, it's controversial whether she's or a villain or not. But in my story, she's the villain because she's a traitor to her gender, and so as opposed to a traitor to her race. And so, there a lot of them are just extra little subtext that I think it's good for the people that understand it, right? Because I always default Simpsons. Like when you're small, you're Simpson, it was so funny. And then you watch it again and it's just like, wow, they referenced all these films and I didn't know anything. And it's so great. Like it's still good for kids, right? And regardless if you understood the actual meaning behind it.
No, that's true because with the Adelitas, I actually heard of them maybe once in a movie, maybe once. And I was like, this sounds familiar. And so I looked it up and I was like, oh, okay, now I remember who they were. They were very important women in the Mexican Revolution who were fighting, of course. And I was like, oh, so this is great because it's like, I love history. So I'm quick to be like, okay, let me research this, let me look it up. So, you have younger, girls reading this graphic novel, they're gonna look them up, and they were like, okay, this is cool because the American school system's not the best. You all know, sadly. So, we don't really get to learn a lot of these histories. So yeah. Yes, the plot, this word is gonna mess me up again. Why do I use this word a lot? Incorporates femicide, an international issue that you brought up, of course, that universally affects women. How important was it specifically to address this topic within Jalisco's story?
Very, because when I think of Mexico, I think of femicide. And you go to Mexico City and you see all these posters of all these missing girls, right? Like there's so much that we don't see because we're in America, right? Or the United States, and we don't understand that we don't see it. But our version and Canada's version is MMIW, right? And so it's just like you just take the most marginalized, right? The most oppressed. So for here are the natives, right? Canada are the natives, right? And then there it's more the Mexican natives, like the Southern Native Americans, right? Which are still Mexican. And so like those are the people that are, you know, being completely tortured and all these other horrible things because they can get away with it. And I don't go into the politics in my story, but you can look up all that stuff. Like it's all there, everything's on the internet. But it's very, very important. It's an important issue. Like they literally kill females so much they have a name for it. Instead of just calling it murder, they just kill them in masses that they literally have a name. And that's very unfortunate, like a horrible world that we live in for that to happen.
Yeah. And no, it's very important to bring up, because then, like you were saying, you look up what's going on in real life, sadly.
Yeah.
So let's go to the other story.
The happier one. It's not happier.
Before we forget her. In Santa's story, you highlight the reality that Santa, a young, powerful character, or witch, because I think she was a witch, right? She had powers, right?
She gets it through brujeria. Her mom gives it to her.
Yeah, a brujeria. So, she dreams of becoming like a brawler and stuff, and she and like many others in her Wexan community face discrimination for lacking a luchador background because most of them have luchador backgrounds in the story. Discrimination is widespread issue impacting BIPOC and LGBTQ plus communities. What was your approach in addressing these challenges specifically within Santa's arc?
Well, I mean, all the BIPOC and all that stuff, that's just every book, right? Because they're all Latinas. They're Latina leads, Latina villains, Latino mentors. Like, that's just important to have regardless, because representation equals power, right? And so that's something that's very fluent through all my books, is that we need to see ourselves. But in regards to, I'm sorry, what was your question again?
Oh, no. What was your approach in addressing these challenges, specifically within Santa's arc?
I didn't really.
Like, with the luchador background, how, it was like, that was more like, I don't want to say the connection was to white supremacy in a sense. It was like more dominant, I guess, that community.
So yeah, I'll tell you about the story and it'll actually answer the question. And so Santa has divine strength at Asia Boo, and at the very beginning she wants to learn to fight, right? She wants to be protector, like a protector and a warrior, like her mom was, because her mom was military. And so that's what starts off, right? That is her want. It's a really easy thing. And there's a big mayor race going on in town. Wexo is to me is really El Paso. I just didn't want to say El Paso, so I made up this town called Wexo, but it's a border town. And so there's a mayor race in town. ICE is the head of one side of it, and ICE is Ilena Chavez-Estevez, because I had to personify what we know as ICE. And anyone that goes against her goes to the entertainment center, right? So it still has to be kid friendly enough. And so they end up shipping to the detainment center. Eventually, everyone that is not actually in a luchador outfit gets sent over there, right? Because their masks are symbolic of what their race is. And so that is kind of how you kind of figure out who is the white supremacist, right? Like one of her advisors has like three Ks on their eyes, right? Because they wear the luchador mask, but they're backward Ks, right? So we understand what it means. Kids hopefully don't understand what it means. And it's little things like that, just visually, like symbolically, that we'd understand and we eventually figure out, okay, they're taking our land, they're taking our names, they're taking our culture like they do, right? Like luchadors came before Superman. If you look at what he's wearing a luchador outfit. He literally has his underwear over his pants, right? That's a luchador. And there's literally things that they take our culture, monks, our land, and everything else in the world. And so that's portrayed in this. But then again, like I was saying, it is a superhero origin story. There's a lot of underlying issues, absolutely. This one obviously is ICE underlying issue, especially with the extra things that they do to the females in ICE. And so that's what it's about. It's very racial, but just in very symbolic visuals and such like that. Yeah, that work?
No, it was great. Yeah, and I saw the ICE interpretations and stuff, and I was like, yeah, especially sadly with everything that's going on now, that's very important to bring up. One more question, Sally. Time is running out. I would have talked more with you about this comic book, but time is running out. So last question. Would you like a La Brava Latino superheroes to be adapted into a live action project, an animated series, a film, or an anime? I think you have mentioned that something.
Yeah, all of it. Like, why not? You see Ninja Turtles and you see Batman in animation, you see it in live action the next year. And so I can, and it should be eventually everything, whether it lives on TV or in features, is fine as well. But it can go either because they're grounded. So you can shoot live action, but it's also really fun if you want to go more anime and more explicit with the bloods pouring out and like who they're fighting. Because Lokita ends up fighting demons actually. And so like that's a pretty visual and you can go much bigger with it. You don't need CGI if you do animation, whether it's anime or just regular animation. And so, yes, the answer is yes to all of it.
Yeah, I hope it happens. I hope it happens. Well, thank you for being here and congratulations. And I can't wait to read the other members of the team. They seem amazing and more Latino stories and superheroes and all that good stuff. So thank you.
Thank you. Of course. Thank you for having me.
Wow. Excellent interviews. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to our authors and their publishers, Little Brown's Mulholland Books and Andrews McNeil. Sorry. Andrews McNeil Publishing for generously. Okay, things keep disappearing on my screen. I'll start again. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to our authors and their publishers, Little Brown's Mulholland Books and Andrew McNeil's Publishing for generously donating books to our early registrants. A special thanks to our incredible interviewers, Comadres and Shirley. Wow, you all did a great job. We appreciate our audience for joining us tonight and submitting thoughtful questions. Most importantly, we want to recognize our dedicated volunteers without whom this book club and its associated work would not be possible. Supporting Latina authors is critical to our mission. We encourage you to write reviews on platforms like Amazon, Goodreads, and Barnes & Nobles, as these reviews significantly impact publishers and potential readers. Consider publishing books to directly support our authors, and if your library lacks one of the titles you're interested in, don't hesitate to request that they order it. We invite you to attend our virtual book club meetings and bring friends along. Remember, our book club is open to men, women, Latinos, non-Latinos. Everyone is welcome. We will announce our January books a little bit later. We have to confirm, I believe, one more author, and then we'll be ready to share that information with you. You're going to love them. Thank you all for your continued support of Las Comadres and Friends National Latino Book Club. And please join us in celebrating Las Comadres and Friends National Latino Book Club by buying books and supporting Latino authors. Let's applaud and amplify diverse literary voices throughout the year. Good night, and always read Latino Lit.